healthy foods, natural foods, no artificial stimulants, everything's natural. Omega-3 fatty acids, your avocados, your flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts. So individuals who are prone to depression, these are key to getting your levels up and overcoming depression. And studies have been done that show that most people who have depression, these are always low. So a healthy diet: fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, food in the natural state. And as I indicated last night, we're going to have a seminar on healthy cooking and foods that are good for the brain. So just hold on to your insert and we will send you an email. We want you to come to that, okay? Addictions, that getting to the root cause also. Alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, morphine, and other narcotics, Valium, and other drugs in that category, illicit drugs, and some prescription drugs. A lot of these can lead to depression. In fact, when you think about alcohol, it depresses the central nervous system. So when you depress the central nervous system, the frontal lobe, the thinking part of the brain, isn't functioning. Also with caffeine, the stimulant for caffeine. Now I know a lot of people love coffee, and Starbucks, if you talk about not having coffee, people, they don't take. I see you over there shaking your head, don't mess with my coffee. Well, the study shows what happens with caffeine. It's a stimulant. I used to drink coffee, and when I tried to get off of coffee, I had horrible headaches, I was irritable. So that's a drug. If you can't give it up, something's wrong with it. But it's even deeper than that. And the reason is that individuals, especially if you're prone to depression, caffeine stays in the body for a certain length of time. If you stop the caffeine by 12 o'clock, okay, perhaps most of it is out of your system. But it affects your sleep. And you might say, well, I drink coffee and I sleep just fine. But not really. Because when you look at the different stages of sleep, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, deep sleep, we have rapid eye movement. And in order to have that restorative sleep, where you're really refreshed and energized for the next day, you have to have deep sleep. And when we drink caffeine, it kicks out the deep sleep. We stay in that rapid eye movement. That rapid eye movement, you're dreaming all the time. And so if you don't get into stage 4, you wake up the next day and you're tired. And that's the effect that caffeine has on our sleep cycle. Okay, drugs. We know that drugs depress the brain. And there are a lot of prescription medications, a lot of the blood pressure medications. They can also have the same effect. And there's a long list of medications that can cause depression. Toxins such as mercury, lead. Many people have become depressed because of what they're taking into their bodies. And there are some cosmetics that have chemicals in them that are also toxic. Social and situational stressors. I mentioned that, the lack of support, a critical loss such as your job, death, and illness. Medical conditions. Thyroid, that's a real big one. Many people who are depressed, the reason that they might be depressed is because they have a low-functioning thyroid. And that has been the culprit in many individuals that are suffering from depression. Postpartum depression, that often happens in women. You know, they have the hormonal fluctuation, head injuries, Parkinson's disease, stroke, hepatitis C, uncontrolled diabetes, and the list goes on. So these are some medical issues that can lead to depression. With your medical interventions, what can we do? You might say, okay, I have diabetes, okay, it's leading to my depression. Well, we can work on getting our diabetes under control. That's one thing. If it's your thyroid, you need to go to the doctor, the doctor draws labs, and he finds out that it's called TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone. If that's elevated, oftentimes that could be the reason why you're depressed. And so getting that under control. Okay, so is there a way out? Yes, there is a way out. Let's go back here. So, frontal lobe. With the frontal lobe, and I'm missing a slide. I don't know what happened to that slide. But with the frontal lobe, this part of the brain is where we do our thinking, abstract reasoning, decision making, morality. It's all right here in the frontal lobe. There's another area in the brain, here in the temporal lobe, and in it we have what is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is that fight or flight. When you are anxious about something, that amygdala starts to become overactive. And it doesn't communicate that well with the frontal lobe. And we've all experienced this. If you're very anxious about something, you really can't think rationally. Has anyone ever been like that? You're so stressed out that you're not thinking very rationally. Well, what happens is that this part of the brain, the frontal lobe, and the amygdala, it's like a competition. And so what happens in depressed individuals, the frontal lobe, which should allow us to be able to process and to reason, it's hypoactive. And on PET scans, we've been able to actually see that the activity is decreased in that area. So what can we do? What can we do in order to improve that area? I can't believe I'm missing my slide. Well, that's okay. We will carry on. Oh, right here. Okay. Okay. I did show you this earlier. There's not a lot of activity in the depressed brain, and there's a lot of activity in the non-depressed brain, and we've been able to see this on PET scans. Now, what are the things that drain our brain? Sugar, alcohol, caffeine, we talked about that. Cognitive dissonance and negative self-talk. We talked a little bit about that last night. Many people who are depressed, they have a lot of negative self-talk. And dissonance, cognitive dissonance, is when you believe one thing in your mind, but then you have a conflict. You know it's true, but then you don't want to acknowledge what is really true. That's cognitive dissonance and negative talk. Hypnosis. A lot of people are getting into hypnosis now. Did you know that that is a source of decreasing the function of the frontal lobe, because your mind is just really slowing down when you get into hypnosis. That is a brain drain. So what can we do to enhance the frontal part of our brain, the frontal lobe? Socializing, getting together with friends, going on vacations. That's one thing. People who are really lonely experience more medical problems. Loneliness, people are more likely depressed. So we have to have an active social life, be engaged. Classical music. Any classical music lovers here? I love classical music. You know what it does? It relaxes the brain. It releases those feel-good hormones. So classical music, and they've done a lot of studies on individuals who are depressed, and listening to classical music 45 minutes 2 times a week will slow down the amygdala and calm the brain. Also, gratitude. When we are giving to others, we're really giving to ourselves. Because when you're helping someone else, you're producing those feel-good hormones. Your body's being flooded. Also, prayer. And there's a study by Dr. Andrew Newberg. And he has a book called How God Changes the Brain. This book is fascinating. And what it says, this is an insert from his book, God is great for your mental, physical, and spiritual health. Breakthrough discoveries show that contemplating a loving God rather than a punitive God reduces anxiety and depression and increases feelings of security, compassion, and love. That is a big brain enhancer. Also, when people are put into a PET scan, a functional MRI scan rather, they can actually see different lobes lighting up in the brain of individuals who are involved in prayer, in singing, and in worship. You can actually see it in the brain on these scans. Cognitive behavior therapy versus psychotherapy. Now, psychotherapy is when you see a psychiatrist and you talk about what's going on in your life. You rehash, your childhood experiences, what happened to you, and, you're ruminating, you're going over this. And studies show that this is not the best therapy. It's been done for years. Now, this is, we'll skip that one. Skip that one. For some reason, I am missing a couple slides. What I want to say about psychotherapy, when you are ruminating, when you're going over and over, again and again, about what happened to you, you're actually reliving that event in your mind. And you're producing those stress hormones. And those stress hormones are causing a toxic reaction in your brain. And so studies show that psychotherapy is not the best form of therapy for individuals that are depressed. What they have found is that cognitive behavior therapy is the best. Because our thoughts, what we think about, drives our feelings, our emotions. And our emotions drives our behaviors. Again, the prefrontal lobe, the amygdala, and those chemicals are going to react in a positive or a negative way. So when we are rehearsing what happens to us, we're stressed out and we will have negative emotions. With cognitive behavior therapy, you are the person who's in control. And you are doing a self-diagnosis. You are looking at your thoughts, and you are countering negative thoughts with positive thoughts. They have found that individuals who participate in this therapy have greater results in a short period of time. Many people who are in psychotherapy, they're in it for years. Studies show that with cognitive behavior therapy, within 18 weeks, individuals have great improvement. So what you will do, what we need to do with cognitive behavior therapy, we have to identify distortions. You know, what I'm thinking, is it really true? Is it reality? Or is it just in my imagination? When we think about individuals that are depressed, they have guilt and they have shame, and they're constantly beating themselves down. So they need someone to be able to coach them. You know, this is not actually as you think it is. You know, there's a distortion there. So we have to correct our thinking, acknowledge what is truth, and then restructure your thinking. And this takes practice. You have to do it over and over again in order to be able to, what I call, cast down those imaginations. So as I said last night, is it true? Is it honest? Is it a good report? If not, we need to cast it down. Another thing that has been very effective in individuals suffering from depression, you know, when in the hospital, you know, we have what we call a multi-team approach. You have the doctors, you have the nurses, physical therapists, you have a whole team. In order to overcome depression, it has to be a whole team approach. You can't use just sleep or just diet. You have to incorporate your diet, your nutrition, your exercise, getting your sleep, spirituality, all of those factors in order to make a significant impact on depression. And with Dr. Neely, Dr. Ted Neely, who's at Weedmar, he has shown that his patients that have been depressed for years, within 5 months, they are free of depression. And so these are the principles that I used when I was depressed years ago. I got my life together, we got on board. You saw that I was pretty hefty in that picture, lost that weight, you know, got a new attitude. And I have not been depressed since that time. And that was when I was about 18 years old. So I know that if you are suffering from any conditions, depression, any physical diseases, these principles will not only help with depression, but with all types of medical issues. So we can have an impact on our genes. They can express themselves differently with lifestyle changes. We can't change our development. What happened to us happened, but we can't rehash it and live it over and over again. We can change our lifestyles. We can influence our circadian rhythms. We can stop those addictions. We can improve our nutrition, get rid of toxins, get a social, active life. Stressors will come. People will, in our family, they will die. But we, with the help of the Creator God, can overcome in time. Medical conditions, yes, we have them. But there are lifestyle approaches that we can use to even get rid of many of our medical conditions. The frontal lobe, yes, it can be enhanced. So, there is a way out of depression. Just because someone has been labeled with depression does not mean that they will suffer from depression. forever. Thank you.